I wait for people to get in here. Good morning. Who's ready to read Anne of Green Gables? I'm just gonna put these in front of my face and hide till someone gets in here. I can sip my coffee, a coffee that I don't like. Oh my goodness, I think my dog's trapped in the bathroom again. Friday drama. Go lay down. I'll never be good at this. I've been doing this how long? How many years? How many? You can't do it by yourself, I don't think. You need like a team of people. At least one other person to make sure the dog isn't in the bathroom or doing, destructive things while you dare pay attention to something other than him. Okay. Maybe it's just me today. Maybe Jupiter going into Pisces tomorrow in my 12th house. I mean, it's time to disappear for a minute, for a while. Okay, 2 more minutes and I'm gonna just start reading. These are growing by the roadside. Aren't they cute? And I still have my roses and snapdragons that I showed on Monday. And they're opening and looking so beautiful. But these are so cute too, these daisies. Cute enough to stop what you're doing and pull over and pick them. Right? Okay. Excuse me. Let me clear my throat a second. I'm going to get ready and start reading. I'll read to Crookshanks. He'll listen to me. Maybe. Maybe not. He doesn't really care. Spoiler alert. He does not care. Anne's confession. We are getting into. He's looking. Oh, Crookie. We're getting into some drama today. To catch you up, Anne was invited to a church picnic, and she's super excited about it. And there's a little bit of foreshadowing. Excuse me. Maybe I'm not coming in clear. This is odd. And nobody would say hello. Nobody would say good morning to me. Andrew's here. Yay. Andrew, I thought maybe you fell asleep or something. Ready to read, but I'll show you these flowers that I picked. This was my gateway conversation flower today are daisies. Okay, great. Good morning, Tate. It's so disappointing that I can't tell who's in here when. I just have to talk to the ether. Anyway, so to catch you up, there was a little foreshadowing the last chapter when Anne was admiring Marilla's brooch, her amethyst brooch, which has a lock of Marilla's mother's hair in it, which I didn't realize until I don't remember that sinking in before. I don't remember that being like an important part of the narrative other than the just briefly mentioned. So anyway, obviously the brooch is precious to Marilla, and chapter 14 is called Anne's Confession. I'm a little nervous. And we're going to start reading. On the Monday evening, yes. And we're getting ready for the picnic. On the Monday evening before the picnic, Marilla came down from her room with a troubled face. Anne, she said to that small personage who was shelling peas by the spotless table and singing Nellie of the Hazel Dell with a vigor and expression that did credit to Diana's teaching. Did you see anything of my amethyst brooch? I thought I stuck it in my pincushion when I came home from church yesterday evening, but I can't find it anywhere. I saw it this afternoon when you were away at the Aid Society, said Anne a little slowly. I was passing your door when I saw it on the cushion, so I went in to look at it. Did you touch it? Said Marilla sternly. Yes, admitted Anne. I took it up and I pinned it on my breast just to see how it would look. You had no business to do anything of the sort. It's very wrong in a little girl to meddle. You shouldn't have gone into my room in the first place, and you shouldn't have touched a brooch that didn't belong to you in the second. Where did you put it? I put it back on the bureau. I hadn't it on a minute. Truly, I didn't mean to meddle, Marilla. I don't think about its being wrong to go in and try on the brooch. But I see now that it was, and I'll never do it again. That's one good thing about me. I'll never do the same naughty thing twice. You didn't put it back, said Marilla. That brooch isn't anywhere on the bureau. You've taken it out or something, Anne. I did put it back, said Anne quickly, pertly, Marilla thought. I don't just remember where I stuck it on the pincushion or laid it in the china tray, but I'm perfectly certain I put it back. I'll go and have another look, said Marilla, determined to be just. If you put that brooch back, it's still there. If it isn't, I'll know you didn't. That's all. Marilla went to her room and made a thorough search, not only over the bureau, but in every other place she thought the brooch might possibly be. It was not to be found, and she returned to the kitchen. And the brooch is gone. By your own admission, you were the last person to handle it. Now, what have you done with it? Tell me the truth at once. Did you take it out and lose it? No, I didn't, said Anne solemnly, meeting Marilla's angry gaze squarely. I never took the brooch out of your room, and that is the truth. If I was to be led to the block for it, although I'm not very certain what a block is, so there, Marilla. Anne's so there was only intended to emphasize her assertion, but Marilla took it as a display of defiance. I believe you are telling me a falsehood, Anne, she said sharply. I know you are. There now, don't say anything more unless you're prepared to tell the whole truth. Go to your room and stay there until you're ready to confess. Will I take the peas with me? Said Anne meekly. No, I'll finish shelling them myself. Do as I bid you. When Anne had gone, Marilla went out about her evening tasks in a very disturbed state of mind. She was worried about her valuable brooch. What if Anne had lost it? And how wicked of the child to deny having taken it when anybody could see she must have, with such an innocent face, too. What do you guys think? Did she take it? Did she put it back? What do you think? What's happened? Do you think Anne's the sort of person that would lie to maybe to save her hide? To get her out of trouble? I don't know what I wouldn't sooner have happen, thought Marilla as she nervously shelled the peas. Of course, I don't suppose she meant to steal it or anything like that. She's just taken it to play or help along with the imagination of hers. She must have taken it, that's clear, for there hasn't been a soul in that room since she was in it, by her own story, until I went up tonight. And the brooch is gone. There's nothing sure. I suppose she has lost it and is afraid to own up for fear she'll be punished. It's a dreadful thing to think she tells falsehoods. It's far worse than her fit of temper. It's a fearful responsibility to have a child in your house you can't trust. Slyness and untruthfulness, that's what she has displayed. I declare, I feel worse about that than the brooch. If she'd only told the truth about it, I wouldn't mind so much. Marilla went to her room at intervals all through the evening and searched for the brooch without finding it. A bedtime visit to the East Gable produced no result. Anne persisted in denying she knew anything about the brooch, but Marilla was only the more firmly convinced that she did. She told Matthew the story the next morning. Matthew was confounded and puzzled. He could not so quickly lose faith in Anne, but he had to admit that circumstances were against her. "You're sure it hasn't fell down behind the bureau?" was the only suggestion he could offer. "I've moved the bureau, I've taken out the drawers, and I've looked in every crack and cranny," was Marilla's positive answer. "The brooch is gone, and that child has taken it and lied about it." "That's the plain, ugly truth, Matthew Cuthbert, and we might as well look it in the face." "Well, now, what are you going to do about it?" Matthew asked forlornly, feeling secretly thankful that Marilla and not he had to deal with the situation. He felt no desire to put his oar in this time. "She'll stay in her room till she confesses," said Marilla grimly, remembering the success of this method in the former case. "Then we'll see. Perhaps we'll be able to find the brooch if she'll only tell where she took it. But in any case, she'll have to be severely punished, Matthew." "Well, now, you have to punish her," said Matthew, reaching for his hat. I've nothing to do with it, remember. You warned me off yourself." Marilla felt deserted by everyone. She could not even go to Mrs. Lynde for advice. She went up to the East Gable with a very serious face, and left it with a face more serious still. Anne steadfastly refused to confess. She persisted in asserting that she had not taken the brooch. The child had evidently been crying, and Marilla felt a pang of pity, which she sternly repressed. By night she was, as she expressed it, beat out. "You'll stay in this room until you confess, Anne. You can make up your mind to that," she said firmly. "But the picnic is tomorrow, Marilla," cried Anne. "You won't keep me from going to that, will you? You'll just let me out for the afternoon, won't you? Then I'll stay here as long as you like afterward, cheerfully. But I must go to the picnic." "You'll not go to the picnics, nor anywhere else, until you've confessed, Anne." "Oh, Marilla," gasped Anne. I've never pause. I've never thought of this before. This has almost a Joan of Arc, probably because I read Mark Twain's Joan of Arc in between the last time I read this, but this has a sort of Joan of Arc flavor to it, this scene. "Oh, Marilla," gasped Anne. But Marilla had gone out and shut the door. Wednesday morning dawned as bright and fair as if expressly made to order for the picnic. Birds sang around Green Gables. The Madonna lilies in the gardens sent out whiffs of perfume that entered in on viewless winds at every door and window and wandered through halls and rooms like spirits of benediction. The birches in the hollow waved joyful hands as if watching for Anne's usual morning greeting from the East Gable, but Anne was not at her window. When Marilla took her breakfast up to her, she found the child sitting primly on her bed, pale and resolute, with tight-shut lips and gleaming eyes. Marilla, I'm ready to confess. Ah, Marilla laid down her tray. Once again her method had succeeded, but her success was very bitter to her. Let me hear what you have to say then, Anne. I took the amethyst brooch, said Anne, as if repeating a lesson she learned. I took it just as you said. I didn't mean to take it when I went in, but it did look so beautiful, Marilla, when I pinned it on my breast, that I was overcome by an irresistible temptation. I imagined how perfectly thrilling it would be to take it to Idlewild and play I was the Lady Cordelia Fitzgerald. It would be so much easier to imagine I was the Lady Cordelia if I had a real amethyst brooch on. Diana and I made necklaces of roseberries, but what are roseberries compared to amethysts? So I took the brooch. I thought I could put it back before you came home. I went all the way around by the road to lengthen out the time. When I was going over the bridge across the Lake of Shining Waters, I took the brooch off to have another look at it. Oh, did it shine in the sunlight. And then, when I was leaning over the bridge, it slipped through my fingers so and went down, 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 all purply sparkling, and sank forevermore beneath the Lake of Shining Waters. And that's the best I can do at confessing, Marilla. What do you think? Do you believe it? It seems really flowery and detailed. Very specific details. Marilla felt hot anger surge up into her heart again. This child had taken and lost her treasured amethyst brooch, and now sat there calmly reciting the details thereof without the least apparent compunction or repentance. Anne, this is terrible, she said, trying to speak calmly. You are the very wickedest girl I ever heard of. Yes, I suppose I am, agreed Anne tranquilly, and I know I'll have to be punished. It'll be your duty to punish me, Marilla. Won't you please get it over right off, because I'd like to go to the picnic with nothing on my mind. Picnic, indeed. You'll go to no picnic today, Anne Shirley. That shall be your punishment, and it isn't half severe enough either for what you've done. Not go to the picnic? Anne sprang to her feet and clutched Marilla's hand. But you promised me I might. Oh, Marilla, I must go to the picnic. That's why I confessed. Punish me any way you like, but that. Oh, Marilla, please, please let me go to the picnic. Think of the ice cream. For anything you know, I may never have a chance to taste ice cream again. She may never. This is us, all of us this summer. I may never have a chance to see people face to face and hug them again. Never. Marilla disengaged Anne's clinging hands stonily. You needn't plead, Anne. You're not going to the picnic, and that's final. Not a word. Anne realized that Marilla was not to be moved. She clasped her hands together, gave a piercing shriek, and then flung herself downwards on the bed, crying and writhing in utter abandonment of disappointment and despair. For the land's sake, gasped Marilla, hastening from the room, I believe the child is crazy. No child in their senses would behave as she does. If she isn't, she's utterly bad. Oh dear, I'm afraid Rachel was right from the first, but I've put my hands to the plow and I won't look back. She's put her hand to the plow. That was a dismal morning. Marilla worked fiercely and scrubbed the porch floor and the dairy shelves when she could find nothing else to do. Neither the shelves nor the porch needed it, but Marilla did. Then she went out and raked the yard. When dinner was ready, she went to the stairs and called Anne. A tear-stained face appeared, looking tragically over the banisters. Come down to your dinner, Anne. I don't want any dinner, Marilla, said Anne sobbingly. I couldn't eat anything. My heart is broken. You'll feel remorse of conscience someday, I expect, for breaking it, Marilla, but I forgive you. Remember when the time comes that I forgive you. But please don't ask me to eat anything, especially boiled pork and greens. Boiled pork and greens are so unromantic when one is in affliction. Oh my gosh. Exasperated, Marilla returned to the kitchen and poured out her tale of woe to Matthew, who, between his sense of justice and his unlawful sympathy with Anne, was a miserable man. Well, now, she shouldn't have taken the brooch, Marilla, or told stories about it, he admitted mournfully, surveying his plate full of unromantic pork and greens, as if he, like Anne, thought it a food unsuited to crises of feeling. But she's such a little thing, such an interesting little thing. Don't you think it's pretty rough not to let her go to the picnic when she's so set on it? Matthew Cuthbert, I'm amazed at you. I think I've let her off entirely too easy, and she doesn't appear to realize how wicked she's been at all. That's what worries me most. If she'd really felt sorry, it wouldn't be so bad. And you don't seem to realize it neither. You're making excuses for her all the time to yourself. I can see that. Well, now, she's such a little thing, feebly reiterated Matthew. He has no comeback. He has no comeback other than his heart and his feelings, right? And there should be allowances made, Marilla. You know she's never had any bringing up. Well, she's having it now, retorted Marilla. The retort silenced Matthew, if it did not convince him. That dinner was a very dismal meal. The only cheerful thing about it was Jerry Butte, the hired boy, and Marilla resented his cheerfulness as a personal insult. When her dishes were washed and her bread sponge set and her hens fed, Marilla remembered she had noticed a small rent in her best black lace shawl when she had taken it off Monday afternoon on returning from the Ladies' Aid. She would go and mend it. Anything to get her mind off of this terrible, woeful situation, right? The shawl was in a box in her trunk. As Marilla lifted it out, the sunlight, falling through the vines that clustered thickly about the window, struck upon something caught in the shawl, something that glittered and sparkled in facets of violet. In facets of violet light, Marilla snatched at it with a gasp. It was the amethyst brooch, hanging to a thread of lace by its catch. Dear life and heart, said Marilla blankly, what does this mean? Here's my brooch, safe and sound, that I thought was at the bottom of Barry's pond. Whatever did that girl mean by saying she took it and lost it? I declare I believe Green Gables is bewitched. I remember now, when I took off my shawl Monday afternoon, I laid it on the bureau for a minute. I suppose the brooch got caught in it somehow. Well, Marilla betook herself to the east gable, brooch in hand. Anne had cried herself out and was sitting dejectedly by the window. Anne Shirley, said Marilla solemnly, I've just found my brooch hanging to my black lace shawl. Now I want to know what that rigmarole you told me this morning meant. You never get to see rigmarole printed in a book. I love it. Why, you said you'd keep me here until I confessed, returned Anne wearily, and so I decided to confess because I was bound to get to the picnic. I thought out a confession last night after I went to bed and made it as interesting as I could. And I said it over and over so that I wouldn't forget it. But you wouldn't let me go to the picnic after all, so all my troubles were wasted. Marilla had to laugh in spite of herself, but her conscience pricked her. Anne, you do beat all, but I was wrong. I see that now. I shouldn't have doubted your word when I'd never known you to tell a story. Of course, it wasn't right for you to confess to a thing you hadn't done. It was very wrong to do so, but I drove you to it. So if you'll forgive me, Anne, I'll forgive you, and we'll start square again. And now get yourself ready for the picnic. Anne flew up like a rocket. Oh, Marilla, isn't it too late? No, it's only 2:00. They won't be more than well gathered yet, and it'll be an hour before they have tea. Wash your face and comb your hair and put on your gingham. I'll fill a basket for you. There's plenty of stuff baked in the house, and I'll get Jerry to hitch up the sorrel and drive you to town to the picnic ground. Oh, Marilla, exclaimed Anne, flying to the washstand. 5 minutes ago I was so miserable. I was wishing I'd never been born, and now I wouldn't change places with an angel. That night, a thoroughly happy, completely tired out Anne returned to Green Gables in a state of beautification impossible to describe. Oh, Marilla, I've had a perfectly scrumptious time. Scrumptious is a new word I learned today. I heard Mary Alice Bell use it. Isn't it very expressive? Everything was lovely. We had a splendid tea, and then Mr. Harmon Andrews took us all for a row in the Lake of Shining Waters, 6 of us at a time, and Jane Andrews nearly fell overboard. She was leaning out to pick water lilies, and if Mr. Andrews hadn't caught her by her sash just in the nick of time, she'd have fallen in and probably been drowned. I wish it had been me. It would have been such a romantic experience to have been nearly drowned. It would be such a thrilling tale to tell, and we had ice cream. Words fail me to describe that ice cream, Marilla. I assure you, it was sublime. That evening, Marilla told the whole story to Matthew over her stocking basket. I'm willing to own up that I made a mistake, she concluded candidly, but I've learned a lesson. I have to laugh when I think of Anne's confession, although I suppose I shouldn't, for it really was a falsehood. But it doesn't seem as bad as the other would have been, somehow, and anyhow, I'm responsible for it. That child is hard to understand in some respects, but I believe she'll turn out all right yet. And there's one thing certain, no house will ever be dull that she's in. And that is chapter 14. We kind of turn a corner here in chapter 15. So I think I might just wait and read it on Friday, if you guys don't mind. Who's here? Who's still here? What do you think of this? What do you think of chapter 15 and Anne's confession and the brooch and all of that? Is anybody here? Is anybody left? Oh my goodness. Tragical. It does seem like, as I mentioned before, that if you're commenting, I can't see your comments. Sometimes that happens on this HAPS app, so I'm sorry if I'm not seeing them. Andrew's still here, good. I was mentioning before when we first started this that Marilla has a certain personality, and she seems very stubborn and immovable, strict, stern, which I don't know about you, but sometimes I think that when someone cleans a whole bunch like she does, it's like a way of getting control over the situation, getting like exacting some kind of control over a situation that's obviously out of control, out of one's hands, right? And I also do I delve into, do I go down this hole? But I feel like Anne, in some respects, Anne represents this chaos agent in Marilla's life, and even though she's in her 60s or very close to 60, I think she is in her 60s. She's still growing. Like she still has this great capacity and potential to grow, and there's certain. I mean, if she had been married or not married, had children up until this point, she would have already sort of constellated this mother aspect, and moved on to maybe she would have moved on to like a more stern personality that she's embodying now. I think there's definite she's definitely naturally a certain way. But yeah, it's just a good symbol of how how we can all take, or anyone, me, look at chaos coming into your life as opportunities of growth. But it's not always like evident when you're going through it, that you're growing and changing, and perhaps becoming more whole. What am I trying to say? I should have thought about this before. Integrated is what I mean to say. You're becoming a more integrated person. Like you're integrating Marilla's integrating parts of her psyche or character that kind of her latent compassion, because she obviously has compassion for Anne and love for Anne, and she's now has this opportunity to demonstrate this in her own way and like integrate that part of her. So she's becoming a more whole and complete person. At the same time, Anne is learning, she can't be just this flight of fantastical, she can't be a pie in the sky and imagining things all the time, right? She can't, because it turns out there's parts to reality that are really enjoyable. I mean, she's so imaginative that she even wants to like almost drown, because she in her mind, in theory, that would be romantic and wonderful and exciting, right? But she can't live in her head all of the time. She's left the orphanage. Where she used that as a way to dissociate from reality. And now, she's realized telling falsehoods, even in extreme and dire circumstances where she doesn't get to go to the picnic, is still not going to serve her. So, and using her imagination that way, she's becoming more grounded. Anyway, I love the transformation of the characters. It's like one of the best parts of the book. And Matthew, he's changing too. Like he gets to actually transmute, constellate the love he has for people, instead of being so closed up and closed off, right? He gets to stick up for Anne and demonstrate his love that way. All right. I'm gonna go, and I will see you guys on Friday, I guess.